Hello, hello again, possums. Yes, it is I, the conspicuous moo. And apologies for the lateness for this one, but I have finally gotten around to doing the Stormblood review. It's to be honest, I've been putting it off because I've been enjoying Shadowbringers so much. So I really had to force myself out of that one, take a step back and have a look at what's just gone past. But no longer. No, this is it. This is the time. If you want a TLDW, is Stormblood good? Yes, of course it is. Absolutely. Is it sandwiched between two better expansions? Well, very likely yes. But, let's get into the details of it with a bit of cracking. Now I'm going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible because there are still people, many sprouts coming through the ranks and experiencing the whole storyline, so I don't want to spoil it for you. There will be a couple of mentions here and there, but nothing you can latch onto and go, "Ah, you fiend!" So the story of Stormblood is a tale of two territories under Garlean rule. So they have slightly different paces to them. They both have the same objective, but they're going to achieve it in different ways. And it does kind of feel, because of that it's two very different worlds. Rather jarring going from one to the other all of the time. And it does once again feel like two smaller stories that weren't quite enough to justify a main story quest that have been smashed together to make an overall narrative. There is some crossover, particularly towards the end, but it really does feel like there wasn't enough for them to stand alone, so why not do them both at the same time? And it also has to be said that some of the early main story quest stuff in Stormblood really does sag rather badly, especially in the Azim Steppe. I mean, the Azim Steppe visually is not entirely enthralling, and there was a lot of busy work in there, probably a bit too much, probably one too many hoops, maybe four too many hoops to actually run through in order to progress the main story quest. And when you get to the point where you just have had enough and just want to keep going, it's kind of indication that maybe that part of it went on a bit too long. I did, however, in Azim Steppe find my first Final Fantasy crush. She's mean, she's lethal, and impossible to stop. I'm sure from those clues you'll be able to work out who I'm talking about. Anywho, really, fundamentally, Stormblood's biggest problems are with the antagonists that they have picked. Now, it's not too much of a spoiler to let you know that the Guardian Empire is largely involved in this. Unfortunately, empires are fairly dull things. I mean, you can think of the obvious historical and pop culture equivalents that pop up when you think of empire. You never think of empire as a positive thing. They're always going to be bad. Now, we do get to see some interesting ideas and theories on, the origins of the Guardian Empire and their, overarching evil plan as well, but it's still evil, so it's rather difficult to write your way out of that. It's kind of a straitjacket you put yourself in when the Empire, the bad guys in black, are the main problem. As for the characters, Gozetsu, I love this guy. If you were in Heavensward, you would have met him towards the end there. I think this is definitely my favourite character from Stormblood. It was exceptionally well written for the most part. I didn't like his character arc after the main story quest. I felt that it went down a completely different path that was quite alien to Gozetsu in general. So, I wasn't particularly pleased with that bit, but he was definitely my favourite character in the expansion for sure. There were some interesting character decisions as well. Some members of the Signs of the Seventh Dawn won't be around an awful lot for this one. Ishtala and Thancred are still around, but you won't be seeing as much of them this time out. The sort of the beginnings and the ends of things, which is a shame. Ishtala, of course, is my favourite. And she does have an absolutely cracking line in the Azim Steppe, which I can still feel the burn from here. Alphino, on the other hand, you can't get rid of the guy. He just follows you around everywhere. But lucky he's got Alice to relieve some of the drudgery. There are some really lovely, poignant, bittersweet moments as well in this story. I have to say that there was some character development for some of the old guard. The people we've already met. That at one point, I will not lie, did actually bring a tear to my eye when I first experienced it. Now that's not something a game has done to me for a very, very long time. It was, also nice to see a few of those backstories fleshed out because, they just didn't get to address that in earlier expansions. You know, you have two heroic faction leads, you know, one for each oppressed territory, and you know, they're perfectly fine as they go, but they're no Sir Emmerich, if you know what I mean. You know, he went through quite a bit more, I feel, as a character in Heavensward than these guys did. I wasn't feeling the Sir Emmerich effect with these two, but you know, they weren't bad characters. It's just, you know, I just didn't find them as engaging. The real character problems really start to show once again when you get to the evil people. The ruler of one dominion is not a particularly interesting character. They go into a line of exposition, you know, right at the end of the main story quest, about, you know, all of their motivations, and it felt very much like it had just been nailed in place in front of her face so she could read it. I would have preferred that to be a little better woven in, and you know, I never ever felt her to be remotely threatening at all until their own personal final act, which comes on later in the main story quest. The other main protagonist is he has a very, very interesting take on life and death, which, you know, I found quite refreshing, really. But he also has a detachment and boredom about them. But it's like, well, you know, if you can't be bothered, why can I be bothered? Yeah, so, you know, there's a real problem there when you've got, you know, like your two major enemies aren't particularly compelling. But, you know, the main characterization crimes committed by Stormblood really come across two main ones. Now, I'm going to try not to spoil this too much for you, but first of all, if you kill off characters and then bring them back, you do tend to ruin the emotional impact and payoff of the original death. I mean, ask Blizzard Entertainment, they've been resurrecting lore characters left, right and centre, and because, you know, they haven't had a fresh idea since 2005. So the other thing is that, you know, making these enemies of yours defeatable on multiple occasions makes their threat irrelevant. You know, the what's at stake here? Well, not a lot. I've beaten this thing twice. That sort of thing. You're not really feeling threatened. What's at stake here? Well, not much really. I'm the Warrior of Light, and that was way too easy. So I won't go any further into it than that, but suffice it to say that, you know, one of the storylines just devolves into silliness and unbelievability, and I wasn't really buying into that one at all. And, you know, damages other characters through association. So, you know, it just didn't feel right the whole way through. And so, you know, the conclusion to that story arc in particular was a bit disappointing. But, you know, by and large, the characters were excellent. Music, I love the music. It's a very, very different beast from, you know, what we were getting in Heavensward, for example. But, you know, the mark of a good soundtrack is when you're humming it while you're doing the dishes. And, you know, that means that they've got in under your skin, and they've burrowed into your mind, and they're staying there permanently. And there's a lot of absolutely lovely music in Stormblood. A lot of the music in Stormblood is, you know, wouldn't be out of place if you were, say, in the spa, sipping a slow gin in, you know, like half a coconut, you know, surrounded by bubbles everywhere. You know, it's all very, very chill stuff. You know, which is a nice shift from the, you know, the bombastic Empire themes that we get a lot, and the more dramatic organ music of Heavensward. There are a lot of piano solos in the soundtrack, but, you know, I like piano solos, so I mean, I don't have a problem with it. And I think the solos actually reflect very well the desolate nature of some of Stormblood's zones. I mean, you do have sort of flashes of colour and activity, but they really are pockets surrounded by, you know, very, very flat steppe or mountainous areas. You know, the sort of stuff, you know, of lots of grass and rock and very little else to excite the eye. So, you know, I kind of think that fits rather well with the piano solo there. Crafting. Now, you might recall in Heavensward I was going, they made it a little bit too complicated. They swung all the way across for Stormblood. I think they kind of went too far the other way this time. Yeah, I know, I'm never pleased, but bear with me. I mean, in Heavensward, for example, you know, what you had was, you know, in order to finish the final crafting quest, you needed a special recipe. Where did you get the special recipe from? You got it from, you know, the master weaving or the master leatherworking for that level. How do you get those? You get those through scripts. How do you get the scripts? You get those through collectibles. Well, how do you get the collectibles? Well, look it up. And now in Stormblood, it sort of went to, oh no, I need this thing. Here are all the ingredients you need. You don't even have to go out and look for them. And just make sure it's high quality and we're done. which is quite a shift. Now, in Square Enix's defense, you know, it looks like they've actually got the balance an awful lot better in Shadowbringers. I mean, I'm about halfway through all of my crafting quests, about 75, 76, most of them so far, and the systems that they put in place and the way that the crafting works is a lot better. They seem to have found the middle ground, but it also seems that, you know, there was an awful lot of unbalanced design philosophy going on when it came to crafting. But because everything was highly simplistic to make, you know, in Stormblood, it did mean that, you know, I wasn't really crafting as much, and then probably accounts for, you know, several million fewer gil that went into my bank over the expansion, because I didn't need to craft anything in order to get things up. It was all pretty much done for me. So overall, I mean, it does sound like I'm being very harsh on Stormblood, but, you know, you have to bear in mind the competition that's around it. I mean, I can see why a lot of people say that it's not their favourite expansion. I mean, the two-tone nature of the main story quest, you know, is jarring. The baddies aren't particularly good, and some aspects of the main story quest are stuff I would have, you know, let go if it was in the Realm Reborn, but, you know, in Stormblood I wasn't really expecting to be doing that again. Anyway, you know, it is still a great adventure to be had. You know, the two main story quest trials are an absolute riot. So, you know, the baddies did actually manage to redeem themselves in some way through that. And, you know, it would have ranked higher in my esteem if it hadn't made a few characterization and story missteps along the way. Shadowbringers, in contrast, has started very strongly, and is a much more engaging story overall, in my personal opinion. You know, yes, we do have the usual suspects in the background, sort of twirling moustaches and going, but, you know, the general world design is more appealing to me, aesthetically, and I'm enjoying the personal journey of the main story quest more in Shadowbringers. Well, you know, at least so far. I mean, I don't see how they can go wrong from here, but, if they were Blizzard Entertainment, I'd go, well, of course it's all going to go to pants. But, you know, Square Enix, Yoshi P, I have faith in you fellas. So, there you have it. Stormblood. Me at the moment, getting along in Shadowbringers, having a lovely, lovely time. I've maxed out fishing and mining. I think botany is just around the corner. So I've almost maxed out all the Disciple of Lands. And I'm working hard on getting those Disciple of the Hands up as well. I don't know, it just seems to resonate with me better, the Shadowlands. Oh, Shadowlands. Yes. Resonates with me like a kick to the nuts. Shadowlands. Shadowbringers. That's what I meant to say. Yes, I will be back very, very soon. I have a couple of videos to come. There'll be some movements around an Activision Blizzard. Bless their cotton socks. You know, there's some more general Final Fantasy news that's sort of floating around at the moment that I'll keep you updated with in a couple of days. But until I get into that, I am the Conspicuous Moo, and konbanwa to you.